everyone, Jason Sherman here. In today's episode of Zero to CEO, I have with me a multi-passionate entrepreneur, RT Custer. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And today we're discussing the journey to the American dream. And this could have a lot of meanings, right? Gaining freedom to their life. Other people, it's starting a business and helping their family succeed as well along the way. And to some people, the American dream just means finding the dream job. What was the American dream to you growing up as a kid?
Absolutely. So I think every time I've heard the term American dream and people are talking about it, they talk about the house with the white picket fence. And to me, that means control over your life, ownership of an asset in a piece of real estate, a piece of land where your kids and the dogs can go play in the yard. And it means a sunny day, a nice day that you don't need to work. You don't have to do anything. You can enjoy life on the porch, on the deck, hanging with family, friends, etc.
Freedom.
That's what it exactly.
It's freedom. To me, freedom has always been the American dream. It's not like, oh, I have this much money, or I can buy this boat, or I can, I have this business with all these employees. All that stuff is fine and dandy. But if you don't have complete freedom from, if you have to make decisions based on other factors, you're not free. And so to me, the American dream really is freedom. So how about running a business? Because obviously you run a business, and we'll get to that too. But what's the freedom, work-life balance kind of like for you, and how important is that?
Yeah, and I've been told, and I've learned a lot recently, and the masterminds I've been in, we've talked a lot about that term work-life balance, and most people are saying it's BS, right? Like there is no balance. Some people are saying it's work-life integration now. It's all that stuff, and I think it all goes back into freedom. Like one of the reasons you become a business owner is to try to obtain freedom. Maybe it's financial freedom, maybe it's freedom over your time, maybe it's freedom over just what you want to do that day, right? You own the business, you get to decide. And a lot of people aren't actually pursuing the American dream or that freedom in their business ownership because they're tied to their business. They actually have less freedom than people working a 9-to-5, because honestly, I'm jealous. And I had this conversation this morning with somebody. If you get to clock out at 5 o'clock and you don't have to stress about anything until 9 a.m. the next day, like I'm a little jealous of that, where I currently sit, because I am multi-passionate. I have lots of businesses, lots of people that rely on me showing up before 9 and staying until after 5.
Yeah, but what about the other side of the fence?
Exactly.
I mean, the other side of the fence is tomorrow I might just not feel like working, and I might just want to go fly a kite,
Yep.
And the other guy's sitting at his desk from 9 to 5, and I'm out swimming at a pool, or, going to watch a game, or whatever it is I want to do, because that's the freedom that I have. And so like, I get what you're saying about the being able to clock out and being jealous of that. But I stopped being jealous of that years ago when I realized, well, wait a minute, I don't actually have to clock in. Right. Let alone clock out. So to me, it's a different mindset. It's more about the 9 to 5, those hours that everybody has, that everyone's kind of trapped, and it's 5 days a week, long days. Whereas I feel like I can work whenever I want, and I could also not work whenever I want. And that's the freedom of the work-life balance that I like to say is you get to choose.
Yep.
When you have a choice, that's powerful. So, and speaking of powerful, I was checking out your website, and you make these really cool watches. And I know I have an Apple Watch. It's not so cool because it's not, intricately detailed like yours. But what got you into watchmaking? Because obviously watches are really cool around the world. They've been synonymous with like James Bond and like the really cool watches he wore that had gadgets in them, and aviator watches that were really big in the old days. So what got you into it? What made you interested in that?
Yeah, so my business partner and I, before we started Vortic Watch Company years and years ago, we had the idea on the golf course at Penn State, actually. Speaking of freedom, right? Free to like get out to play golf instead of studying and working, right? And we wanted to make a watch that was actually made in USA. That was our original kind of purpose and what we're after. And it almost started as like this project of just, is it even possible? And we did a bunch of research and we stumbled on the history of what we call the great American watch companies. If you look back 100 years ago, America was the Switzerland of the world. We had 10 different watch manufacturing companies, and back then they were making pocket
Pocket
watches.
watches, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Today, basically, like you think the 2008, 2009 standpoint when gold and silver prices were really high, people were scrapping pocket watches
Crazy.
from 100 years ago for the gold and the silver. And so we learned about that whole thing, all the history of the old companies and the movements that they made, all the gears and springs that tell time in these
Wow.
watches, these pocket watches. And then we realized if we saved those old pocket watches from being scrapped and thrown away and turn them into wristwatches, we
Hmm.
can make the bigger parts on the outside, the case, and like
Right.
we could figure that out. And
Because
so
pocket
it's
watches
called,
are historically bigger, right? They were
yeah,
meant to be held in your hand with the little button you'd
exactly.
push.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
this, you can tell the crown is at 12 o'clock. It's up here. So this is
Wow,
a
it's up
pocket
top.
watch
So for
inside.
the listeners not watching our YouTube, he's holding up a really big watch with a really big button at the top. That is really cool. I like that. So
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 it's
so you took the
preserving American
old,
history.
yeah, you took the old and you decided to preserve. That's really cool. So it's kind of like a documentary. It's like a
Yeah. Well,
documentary about American history when it comes
and
to watches.
there's so many cool stories that are in there. I mean, like the Hamilton Watch Company was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so they're close to my heart. But Hamilton was the watch that won the war in World War II. They manufactured all of the timekeeping components for a lot of the aircraft and pocket watches and wristwatches for the U.S. military
Wow.
and the Allied forces. And so there's like so much. That's just one example. But there's so much history
And
that
those were
go into
heavy
these
duty.
things, and they were made the right way. They were made
Yeah,
in
they were
America
heavy
back then.
duty.
Like they were synonymous with quality, and so preserving them and saving them and turning them into wristwatches now. Not only is it awesome, like storytelling, but it's also 100% American made. It just we don't have to figure out how to make those gears and springs and all the tiny little parts that are made in China or Switzerland now. We're just refurbishing the ones that were made 100 years ago.
That's really smart. And I remember growing up, Casio watches and the Seiko watches and all those digital watches started coming out, and
Mhm.
they were like the new thing, right? It was like the most popular because you could tell the time and the date and
Yep.
possibly the weather and things like that. So it was like this cool thing. And then I remember the big fad of the swatches, and
Yep.
I was a victim. I had a lot of those swatches growing up. So there's a lot of these fads and a lot of moments in time, pun intended, where watches kind of came in the zeitgeist and then kind of faded away. It sounds like you're doing something new that hasn't been done before and could potentially be the new thing. How do you attract the customers? How do you get visibility for something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is doing stuff like this, and just being an evangelist of what we do, trying to get on as many podcasts as I can. I have a PR company that helps with like storytelling. I was lucky enough to get into Entrepreneur Magazine last year, and they told a story of how we were in this huge lawsuit with a much bigger, with Swatch, actually, a massive watch company. So they told that story. And then we do a lot of events, like basically trade shows, to try to get in front of watch customers and people that like watches. And then honestly, I think our most practical and cheapest and best way of marketing is just word of mouth. We make a
Right.
really high quality product that we stand behind. People love it. And people talk about it. I mean, when you walk around with a
It
watch
does look really cool.
that's interesting and different, people are like, oh, tell me about that. Like it's a conversation piece. That's how we market it. And I think that gets us a lot more legs than, paid traffic on Instagram.
So my inner entrepreneur is kicking in and saying, "Man, if I had one of those watches on my wrist and I could click a button to pop it out and then have it on the chain and have it back as a pocket watch, that would be cool." And I'm curious if that's something you can do. Because think about it, like sometimes you don't want to have it on your wrist for a certain reason. Maybe you don't want to
Sure.
get it damaged. Maybe you're playing a sport. Maybe you're doing something and maybe you can leave the band on, but you can pop it out and put it in your. I'm just thinking out loud. But anyway, there's something really cool about refurbishing or rebuilding something or preserving something. Maybe you haven't thought of this, or maybe you are. I don't know. I noticed on TikTok there are these companies that repair old doorbells, old radios. They take them completely apart. They fix all the components. They clean all the screws. They use all sorts of equipment. It's crazy if you watch these videos, and they just completely restore something that was 100 years old. And the video is maybe like a minute, 2 minutes long, all sped up. And at the end, you see this beautiful, brand new device that is 100 years old. If you make a video like that of the actual restoration of one of these pocket watches and becoming a wristwatch and showing it in fast speed, I think you're going to blow this out of the water if you post those on TikTok.
Yeah, you're just a little bit ahead of me. We're working on it. I just got engaged with someone who is a videographer here, and they're gonna basically try to document the whole process. It's not quite like, it doesn't happen all at one sitting, and so there's like lots of different steps and processes in it. But we call it like the story of a watch, or a day in the life, So we're going to take it from start to finish, and then yeah, if we can replicate that and make a few different videos, or videos even going deeper into the process of like, here's how we make the case. The metal case starts as just a chunk of metal, and then we machine it out, and that's really interesting too. So yeah, I love that stuff, and that seems like what people want is video, like just how it's made. I'm curious,
and maybe even maybe even like a documentary style too, like Ken Burns does with like the documentation, the photos of like where it came from, like the story of the owner, and like showing like maps and things like that. Would be very interesting, and I think that would attract the right kind of audience. And watches are very popular. So, what have you learned from running this business that you can tell our listeners here, things that you've either made mistakes or things that you did right, and things that you think could help others?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about that I've learned just by trying and testing is email marketing. So we do all those ways of trying to get people to the website. And then once they're on the website, we try to obtain their email address. And our email list has gone from about 3,000 people, maybe 4 years ago, to now over 40,000 people. And there's a lot of little things to talk about there. But I feel like it's one of the biggest missed opportunities that a lot of my friends that are business owners talk about. And when I share this, people are like, oh man, I really should do that. But it's just, it's almost free marketing. I have your email address. You said that you were interested in maybe buying a watch someday, or just interested in learning more about Vortic Watch Company. So I'm going to send you automated emails that tell you all about us, show you behind the scenes pictures and videos of how it's made, educate you on the history of the watch companies, all that kind of stuff. I'm marketing and selling to you, but with your permission.
Right. You're not paying for time. An ad. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I built this whole, it's 22 emails long. And so when you go to vorticwatches.com, you sign up for an email list, you get an email every 7 days for, it's a couple hundred days that this goes on.
Wow.
And you learn a little bit about the company every week, and it's all written by me and my voice, and comes from RT at Vortic Watch Company. And then every Tuesday at 12 noon, I send a mass email newsletter to every single person that subscribes. And I just say, like, here's what's happening this week at the company. And PS, here's some watches that we made in the last week that are really cool and you should check out. And that the open rates on those emails are insane. And there's no way I can share all of that information for free on social media to anyone that wants to listen, but I don't own that audience. Instagram and Facebook owns that audience that's not going to make it to maybe 5 or 10% of them.
Right.
When I send the email, it's going to hit your inbox, whether you open it or not. There's a little bit of science and psychology behind like what I'm putting in those subject lines, but the people that care and the people that are in the market to buy a watch, they open the email, they read them, they check it out, and then they click and they buy a watch.
Right.
And I've been doing it for about 3 years, and I know it works. And I see that as something that not a whole lot of people do. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort, and it 100% has a huge ROI.
That's great, man. I mean, email marketing people, you're right. There's a stigma associated with it. People say that, oh, they're not going to open it, or it's going to go to the spam folder, or there's another list of things of why people don't do email marketing. But it is powerful, and it does still work. And I believe it works better in conjunction with other things, so that your brand is out there. And when the email comes in, they'll say, oh yeah, I saw that here, or I heard of it there. I don't think it's a good standalone product, but I think it does work great as you mentioned, in along with social media and things like that.
Yep.
So what's the way for people to order one of these watches? Where can they get one? Can they custom order it? Are there any criteria or anything like that? Because this is kind of like a custom thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do, I guess we have three revenue streams or three different ways you can buy a watch. One is we do a watch of the day. So every single day at 12 noon, we post a new one of a kind watch that's for sale. And so they go pretty quickly. They're all on vorticwatches.com/watches. You'll see everything that's still available. That's probably the best way. That's fun. You can follow us on Instagram, follow that email list, and then just kind of shop. And when you see one you like, you can get it. We also have a custom order process, which is for people that have family heirloom pocket watches. We call it Convert Your Watch. And you can literally just Google Convert Your Watch. We're the only people that do this. But we take family heirloom like grandpa's pocket watch and turn it into a wristwatch. It's a highly custom, takes 6 months, costs a little bit more, but it's worth it. It's an awesome service.
Wow.
And then finally, every November 11th, which is Veterans Day, we launch our military edition. And it's those pocket watches that were flown on the B bombers in World War II. We make 50 of them. They go really quick.
Jesus.
But that's the coolest thing that we do. It comes out November 11th, and we have a whole separate page and process for ordering that. And it's just vorticwatches.com/military.
Very cool. So vortexwatches.com to grab one of these watches. They sound really cool. I'll be checking it out after this episode. Thanks again for coming, RT. This was great. And as always, we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Jason.